Hi, I'm Jim Gabe, founder of Citizen Arts. Welcome to our new episode of In Their Words, What Public Officials Do for Us. This series takes a close look at some of the vast range of people who serve us at the federal, state, and local levels. Why a close look? Because we entrust them with responsibilities and powers that affect our lives in big and small ways every day. And of course, public officials at the federal level are today being disparaged and valued as perhaps never before as the Trump administration fires and reorganizes them and public debate rages about their usefulness, numbers, effectiveness, and so forth. If you haven't listened to our prior episodes, here's what you've been missing. A state secretary of state who does far more than certify elections. For example, fighting cyber election misinformation, an interlude with a non-judgmental judge with insights into the noble role of those called to the bench, a state rep, a self-described lifetime fighter for equal rights who gets 90% of her community's vote, a district attorney, a prosecutor born to solve homicides, to do justice for his brothers and sisters, a coroner dedicated to giving voice to those who can't speak for themselves, a sheriff recognized nationally for his leadership in the oldest continuing non-military law enforcement profession, a county commissioner who takes the barbs and shafts of angry constituents. In this episode, Citizen Arts is honored to present a conversation with Penny Rashin, a 17-year member of the New Canaan, Connecticut Board of Education. Inflicted by what she calls the education bug, Penny relishes being part of the most important business of America, ensuring its young people are educated for an ever more competitive world. Penny explains how the Board of Education functions as an extension of and takes direction from the State Board of Education, how it works in partnership with the main funder of the schools, the community, setting budgets in cooperation with the boards of selectmen and finance and the town council, and always in conversation with townspeople at all Board of Education meetings. The power is with the voters, says Penny. There's no rubber stamping. There's often pushback. It can be heated. I don't think anybody shy is allowed to move to New Canaan, she chuckles. What does she, as a member of the Board of Education, see as some of today's biggest educational challenges? Ensuring students can handle social media's onslaught of information and misinformation, and that artificial intelligence is a positive learning tool. And yes, there's increasing contentiousness surrounding education. I've learned that at times it's good to be feisty, she says. You need to stand up for what you believe in, deal with divisive issues with an open mind, compromise, always with the aim of doing what's best for the students and their educators. That outlook clearly suffuses and guides her board. New Canaan schools are ranked number 1 in Connecticut and among the top in the USA. You'll find her full bio in the show notes and at citizenarts.org. Welcome, Penny Rashin. We so appreciate your taking the time to join our conversation.
Well, thank you, Jim, for having me. I think what you're doing is a terrific service.
Well, thank you very much. Education is probably our main subject.
And I'm glad to know you have the education bug the way I do.
Oh, we sure do. Let's get right into it. Let's start with New Canaan. Tell us about your community.
So New Canaan's a small town. We're about 21,000 people. That splits 15,000 adults and about 6,000 children. We are approximately 45 miles northeast of New York City. So a lot of the adults in the community either work in Southwest Connecticut, where we are, or in New York. It's a town that is devoted to families and educating children. Education is sort of the business of the town.
Where does New Canaan fall as far as economic level goes?
New Canaan has a substantially good economic level. If you do the ratings amongst the towns in Connecticut, we rate right up there with highest ability to pay, which is one of the things that you look at in our union contracts.
And is it a diverse community?
Well, we're doing better on that. There's niche.com, which rates schools. We usually get a C or C plus on diversity. We're doing better in that regard. But we have a ways to go to more accurately profile America.
Let's talk about the school board. Anyone who's been a parent has had a sense of the presence of the school board in their community. And I've always wanted to have a broader understanding of what school board does.
What we do is we basically supervise the pre-K through 12 schools. We have 5 of them, and we have about 4,100 students. In Connecticut, we have dual agency. We are actually an arm of the State Board of Ed, but we report to the town in order to get our funding. So we have to have very good, close relations with the town. We are 9 people in New Canaan, and we are set up to basically represent the interests of the community.
Your involvement with the community, how does that happen? Are you operating distinctly from those who put you in office, or are you engaged in a formal way with the community?
Mostly we operate distinctly. You run for election in Connecticut. So you have your platform, you go out, you tell the community what your ideas are, you write about them. So they're in the paper, and then the results of the election. Then we coalesce and work as a board together with the superintendent, representing the interests of the town. We do allow for public comment at the beginning and the end of every meeting. All of our meetings are open to the community under the Freedom of Information Act. We have regular Board of Ed meetings twice a month, and then we'll have committee meetings.
How much of those meetings would be executive session versus public participation?
Oh, executive session is very limited. So I would say 95% is public session. You go into executive session to discuss union contracts. Personnel matters is executive session. Security, school security, which has been huge since Sandy Hook in 2012.
You're not far from Sandy Hook, are you?
No, we're not. We're about an hour. That very much impacted schools across America, but particularly schools in Connecticut.
Let's talk about the daily operation of a school board. The superintendent would be your main contact with the operations of the schools, I take it?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, he's our only employee. We stay in very close touch and review him or her every year. But then the superintendent hires the 750 people that work in our schools. So the relationship with the superintendent and the school board is key.
How do you work with the superintendent? Are you monitoring day-to-day activities, or is he reporting to you programs that have been approved by the board? How much of the impetus for his work comes from him? How much comes from the school board?
Well, I would say, I think it's a partnership. Every summer, we set Board of Ed goals for what we want for the upcoming school year. And then the superintendent helps us draft the goals. He has a lot of input into them as well. We discuss them openly at meetings and then vote on them. If we're working on curriculum, we'll say these are the curricular areas we're updating this year. The most important thing is we want to give our students the skills they need to fulfill their potential and succeed in college and beyond. And that's technical skills as well as social and emotional skills and knowledge skills.
Let's say the superintendent were leaving. How did the school board go about finding a new superintendent?
The superintendent has switched twice since I've been on the board. The first time we did a nationwide search and then promoted our second in command to be superintendent. It's a shallow market for superintendents because they need an incredible array of skills. You have to understand budgets, you have to understand all the pedagogy of teaching, and then you have to have incredible personal and communication skills to negotiate and get the budget passed by the town bodies. And I've seen where a superintendent has misstepped and the reaction from the community can be harsh.
Do you use a search company to help you identify candidates?
When we did the nationwide search, we did do that.
What percentage of students go on to higher ed from New Canaan?
We are a community where 95% plus end up at some sort of college or university or 2-year program. Some kids go on to a gap year and then on to college.
Is the State Board of Ed giving you the guidelines for instruction, the types of textbooks you're going to use, special programs? Does that come from the state, or is that formulated between the local level and the state?
That's a fascinating question, and it varies from topic to topic. In Connecticut, there's a right to an education through high school. That's a constitutional right. The state will set the educational standards for math, for English, for social studies, next generation science standards. I feel the system works best when the state says, this is where we want you to be. These are the goals. This is where we want your students to be, and then leaves the means to the school district, because different school districts have different kinds of students and one size doesn't necessarily fit all. But sometimes the state does get into prescribing methods. And then we either agree with them or disagree with them. We can try and get a waiver to say, well, we understand this is a great standard, but we're trying to achieve it this way.
Do you have latitude to install in your community programs that are unique to New Canaan?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. And we do. We have two programs in New Canaan that have come on in more recent years. One is our Literacy Academy, and that is a K-3 initiative. And we now have an Orton Gillingham's teacher trained in all of our elementary schools. This is a fabulous way of teaching students who have problems learning how to read. We identify the students who are at risk. We put them into the program, and then we try and graduate them out of the program when they've achieved where we want them to go. We get to do things like that, which I think really help lift the level of education in New Canaan.
Does a program like that need approval from the state?
No. We don't need approval from the state from that. We need funding from the town to hire the teacher.
Who are you working with in the town to fund the programs?
Every fall, we talk to all the administrators and we come up with our program. We've set some guidelines for what we want the student-teacher ratios to be. We have predictions about what our enrollment's going to be for the next year and looking forward. Using all of that, the superintendent crafts a budget and brings it to the Board of Ed, and we vote on it. Then we have to take that through our three town bodies, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the Town Council, and get their approval. That process starts in late January and goes through April.
Do you find at times there is pushback?
There's definitely pushback. I mean, the community is very interested in it. There's no rubber stamp. The town bodies approve a certain amount of money and they give it to you. And then you, as a Board of Ed, get to decide where that money is spent. We have just huge budget book, which details every single teacher and every single position and all the facilities and where the curriculum is and what programs we're buying. Gives a lot of authority to the Board of Ed to determine how the resources should best be employed, working with the superintendent and the executive team.
At what junctures do the townspeople, the taxpayers, voice their opinions about how the money should or shouldn't be spent?
At all the town meetings, they can speak up, as well as at the Board of Ed meetings, to say what they think should and shouldn't happen. I remember one year we had cut a social support position and some citizens really didn't like it. And they came and spoke, and that position ended up being put back into the budget. The real power is with the voters. They can have it for any appropriation. The money is not firmly given to the Board of Ed until after a certain notice period. And during that time period, you can have a referendum. So you have to get a certain number of petitions, signatures to start the referendum. And if you have it,
that referendum is a town-wide vote?
Town-wide vote. We've never had a referendum on a school budget.
I'm recalling the days when I was a reporter covering school boards and town councils in communities in New England. Sometimes it could get heated. Do you have a citizenry in New Canaan that is shy about speaking up?
No, I don't think anybody shy is allowed to move to New Canaan. That's a good thing about it, right? And I think we're a very open community. So people feel that they can come tell us what they think. And citizens do. So we've had some very heated discussions over the years about what we should and shouldn't be doing, which is good. It's healthy.
Absolutely. Talking about heated discussions and topics of controversy, there's a national debate these days about the role of the U.S. Department of Education. And I'm wondering if you feel any of that as board members on the local level in New Canaan.
We have not felt it Most of our money is local funding. We get some state funding as well. It's a $106 million budget, and about $2 million of it comes from the federal government. Most of it is dedicated to special education and various grants. I did a little research. Connecticut gets $1.1 billion from the federal government. I don't know what's going to happen. The money for this year has been allocated, so we feel like we're safe in spending it. But we'll have to see what happens next year. Those funds are put to incredible use by the districts. And a lot of districts, like the city districts, get a lot more federal money than New Canaan gets.
As I understand it, and this would certainly jibe with what you're saying, most of the funding coming from the federal government is for things like special education and is mainly aimed at communities that may not have the economic base to support those programs on their own. Is that correct?
I'm really familiar with New Canaan, and I don't know the rest of the towns. I do know that New Canaan gets, because of our ability to pay, less state money, we get less federal money, but what we do get is important. So I think that if you got rid of that 1.1 billion, it would have huge consequences across Connecticut in all different kinds of districts, and probably the city districts would be affected most significantly.
One of the criticisms of the U.S. Department of Education is that it has undue influence over education at the local level. That, in effect, it's telling communities what they can and can't teach. Is that the case in your town?
It's not been the case. I can't say what's going to happen going forward. It's the state that sets the standard. So I don't know if you remember the Common Core controversies.
Yes, I do.
Common Core was a certain set of math and English standards that were set up, and then states adopted them. Connecticut adopted them. They were somewhat controversial at the time. Our superintendent and team told us that they were high quality standards and we could teach them and that our students would be well served. Now, I don't know what the federal government could do. They've never really waded into, in my experience, setting standards that we had to teach. There are a couple of laws that were passed a long time ago that give students the right under the Rehabilitation Act to have a 504 plan. If you have special needs.
Please tell us what a 504 plan is.
If you have a student that cannot perform to norm for specific reasons, then you can apply for and receive a program that addresses your needs and will see you through. And this could be pre-K through 12, because sometimes students who are at risk are identified even before they get to school. And you have an annual review where you sit down with the parents and go over what the plan is. There's state statutes involved, but there are also federal statutes involved. And that's a huge percentage of every school's budgets.
Thank you. I'm going to read part of the U.S. Department of Education's mission statement: to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access for students of all ages. As we have traveled in our work for Citizen Arts in various places in the world, it has become very apparent to us that the emphasis on education varies enormously. The U.S., as I'm sure you've heard, is falling farther and farther behind certain other nations, from a huge nation like China to a very small, comparatively small country like Denmark. New Canaan seems to me to be a community that wouldn't have that kind of issue, but U.S. education generally does, according to the rankings. The U.S. is now ranked way behind in math, science, and reading. I'm wondering if some of your programs New Canaan are specifically aimed at ensuring students have the skills to compete with the very best, whether it's elsewhere in the U.S. or elsewhere in the world where they are higher ranked.
That's in our goals. That's something that we strive for every year. I don't know if you've looked at niche.com. They rate schools on various levels. I guess you quote them if you do well and you ignore them if you don't do well. Well, we happen to do well. They ranked us number 1 in Connecticut and number 30 in the nation. And I think it's because we have a global program to reach every student. You not only need strong academics. When you get to high school, you need a strong visual and performing arts program, lots of clubs, great athletics, because you don't know what it is that's going to be the key, the hook that a particular student wants, so that they come to school, they find their people, and they're happy and want to go out and learn and stretch themselves.
Great. Thank you. Okay. How did it come about that Penny became a member of the school board?
Well, I trained as a lawyer And then I worked for 17 years as a litigator. And then my husband got transferred overseas. I stopped working. We moved back to New Canaan. I didn't go back to work as a lawyer. And frankly, I needed something substantive to do. I got asked out of the blue to be on the high school building committee. And I said, sure, why not? I got hooked on education and the excitement of creating the spaces where the magic happens. When I finished that, there was an opening on the Board of Ed, and I was appointed to that opening. Understanding the pedagogy and seeing how education changed every year, to me, was fascinating. I just wanted to be a part of it. And I was grateful to the town for having educated my two sons so well.
Who appointed you?
Actually, the Board of Ed appointed me. I had run for our Board of Selectmen and didn't win, but was appointed to fill a position on the Board of Education. And then I ran for election to the Board of Ed. Before the Board of Selectmen race, and I had never run for any office.
Were you a knock on the door kind of person? Was it hold meetings? What did you do to make it work for you?
Well, I'd say the best reason I was able to become elected is that there's a statute in Connecticut that says that no majority party can have more than approximately 2/3 to 3/4 of any of the seats on an elected or appointed board. So even if every Republican got more votes than I did, I would still, as a Democrat, prevail. That was a little bit of insurance for me, as it turned out. But what I learned from that is when you run, you present yourself honestly, give your goals, sort of raise your profile a little bit. Even if you lose, good things can happen.
How many elections have you been in since?
4 times I've been elected to the Board of Ed. 3 of those were uncontested. So if I went and voted for myself, I was going to be elected. Those were easy. But then one was very contested. And, we went out and we door knocked and we had campaign materials and we had fundraisers at friends' houses. And it's really busy. And what I found is that in a small community like New Canaan, door knocking is the best. You're there, you're talking person to person. People really don't want the telephone calls. And you learn things.
Okay, so knock, knock. I open the door and I see you standing there. How do you handle that?
A lot of times nobody answers the door, even if they're there. But if they do answer the door, hi, I'm Penny Rashin. And when I would say I'm on your Board of Ed and I want to know what you think about the schools and tell you why I'm running, people were pretty open because people care about education in New Canaan. I remember one house I went to, he said, we're spending way too much money on the schools and this is how much they're spending in Norwalk. And I think you could cut your budget by 15-20% and we would have equally good schools.
To which you said,
well, I respectfully disagreed. But I don't think I convinced him.
Let's talk about some of the challenges, some of the moments where perhaps the board has been discomforted by what's been going on in the schools or in the community.
I've been on 17 years now. I was thinking about what had most changed. I think it's the rise of social media and the fact that every student now has this incredibly powerful personal device. And the students are pummeled with information and national crises, state crises. It's easier to bully. It's easier to have peer pressure. And it doesn't end when the students leave school. It continues. We've developed a couple of K through 12 curriculums to help students deal with that, which I think have been effective in helping our students. One is the K through 12 digital citizenship curriculum. That'll teach students where to find safe information, accurate information on the web, what sites to avoid. And you start this in kindergarten. They're not using iPhones then, but you want them to start understanding what appropriate limits might be. You teach them they're in control of their relationship with their device and when to put it down. You don't want students gaming all day. And we teach also that they should be as polite on their device as they are in person.
Has social media been a factor in the delivery of upsetting information to faculty, administration, or the school board?
Oh, yeah. Things can explode. I can think of one incident at one elementary school, and then it spread by 2:00 in the afternoon. It seemed like everybody knew about it across town.
Can you tell us what sort of thing that was?
That was a parent that didn't like one of the books that was for sale. We have not had any book challenges in New Canaan, but it was resolved by the administration. But that type of thing just explodes across the community.
This issue of books in the school libraries and the town libraries, has not roiled New Canaan.
We have a process where if there's a book or some materials that are disliked by a town member, a parent, then they can protest them. You go through the process and it eventually can come to the board, and the board can make a determination whether or not to go there. We have not, as a board, had to do that yet.
And no board members have felt they've been singled out, targeted by members in the community who have, let's say, strong or extreme positions on this way or that about educational issues?
I don't know if we've had targeting. We have had some things happen during elections that were not so pleasant, where a couple of people running received anonymous letters put out about them that weren't appropriate. We've stayed pretty civil in New Canaan, and that's been good. But I think you have to keep fighting for that every year.
Do you communicate as a board member through social media channels with the community?
We do, in a very measured way. Our superintendent will put out notices. I don't think we use Facebook and all that too much, but I'm probably a little bit behind that and not looking at it as much as I should. I'm not on the communications committee for our board, but we use it appropriately. I think we stick with some old-fashioned methods as well.
What committees are you on?
The governance committee, and I've been on the finance committee. And I was on the innovation committee, which is a really fun one. You have artificial intelligence coming. You have all this new theory about design thinking. We need to look at these topics in detail and figure out how we're going to integrate them into our community and prepare our students for this new way of approaching the world.
Do you still have opportunities to be with the students? Do you participate in school events? How do you stay close to your constituents in the schools?
Oh, well, by being on this artificial intelligence innovation committee, because we have student reps on that. So you'll meet with the curriculum leaders in that area and you'll talk to the students. We have students sometimes come present. One of the great things that we do is every December, we meet with recent graduates of New Canaan High School who've gone off to various colleges. And we say, well, what did we get right? What did we get wrong? What do you want us to improve? One of the programs that we started as a result of that is a senior internship program that in its beginning year had something like 9 participants, and now over 90% of the class does.
Wow, that is wonderful. Do students generally come to meetings and give presentations on certain programs, their experience?
No, they're not required. When we get the curriculum presentations, they'll try and get to the student level. So like, for example, one of my favorite videos ever was a group of elementary students talking about our social and emotional learning, sort of emotional intelligence curriculum. And so they were chanting this, if you can name it, you can tame it. It's true, right? If you don't recognize what your emotion is, you're not going to be able to get to where you want to be. We could do more, but it's a small community. So you talk to your friends, you talk to your peers, and you find out what's going on.
What have you learned about yourself being on the education board?
I think sometimes it's good to be feisty. You need to stand up for what you believe in. And I've also learned that when you get these divisive issues, that you have to be honest about where you are as a district, honest about what your goals are. You have to try and empathize with all the sides, particularly the people you disagree with, and then come up with a compromise solution. I found that what motivates me is trying to do what's in the best interest of the kids. And I love that. And that if you're positive about that and tell the community why you're doing it, that generally we get support for that.
What do you bring to the board that you feel is absolutely the bottom line for you in representing your constituents?
I think it's an open mind, and that I agree with our superintendent, who always says that education is the most important business that we do in America, getting the next generation to understand that. And so I'm coming with an open mind. I may have run on the Democratic ticket, but you leave that at the door. And then what you have to focus on are, what are the students' needs? What are the goals? How are we going to get there? Let's scaffold from the end back to the beginning. And I think that the skills I developed as a lawyer, analysis, communication, and digging into the details, because the devil is in the details sometimes, that would be what I think I bring to the table.
You're just dealing with each other as individuals. Partisanship is not entering into your discussions.
Largely, that's the way it was. I would say that in recent years, when people have put more of a spotlight on education, that's gotten to be a little bit more difficult, even in New Canaan. But I think it's important that we all strive for it. More recently, we've had contentious elections. But then when we all get on the board, we have to work with each other. And we've done that well so far in New Canaan. You got to work at it every year.
Glad to hear that, Penny. We ask everybody the same final question. If you could snap your fingers and change one thing, in your case, it's about education, either in your community in New Canaan or the nation as a whole, what would it be?
Well, I mean, I do think getting education right for this next generation and every subsequent one is incredibly important. So, what I would do is I would want to continue to attract the best and the brightest of people to go into education and into educational administration. So, I would raise the status, pay, and respect that teachers get, because I think that that's degraded over the years. And so that's what I would do.
Penny Rashin, thank you very much. I think any of us who would be serving on a board would love to serve with you.
Well, thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. I hope I've convinced other people to run for their boards of ed. It's a fabulous position to have.
There you have it, dear listeners, the latest episode in our Citizen Arts series, In Their Words, What Public Officials Do for Us. We hope you found this conversation with New Canaan School Board member Penny Rashin enlightening. And we hope you'll join us for upcoming episodes with the likes of mayors, city planners, tax collectors, firefighters, U.S. Congresspeople, and more. On behalf of Penny and my Citizen Arts colleagues, heartfelt thanks for tuning in. I'm especially grateful to Jill Gabe, our executive producer, and Jeff Lewis, our producer and technical guru. Citizen Arts is dedicated to presenting information, analysis, and constructive opinion about matters of civic importance. We're a not-for-profit 501c3 organization. Your interest and support of our work are greatly appreciated. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast. We invite you to join the conversation. Check us out at citizenarts.org and let us know what you think. And always, please stay healthy in mind and body, wealthy in goodwill, and wise in action.